Richard Harmon grabbed the janitor by the throat and slammed him against the wall. "You touched her," he snarled. "You put your filthy mouth on Victoria Langford." "I saved her life." Marcus choked out the words. "She wasn't breathing." "That's not what the camera saw." Richard leaned in close, his breath hot and rotten. "And that's not what the world is going to believe." He released Marcus and straightened his tie. "You're finished. By tomorrow morning you won't just be unemployed. You'll be unhireable, unhousable, unforgivable." Marcus slid down the wall, gasping. "I did the right thing." "That's exactly your problem." Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. 30 minutes earlier, Marcus Webb was mopping the 42nd floor when he heard the scream. Not a normal scream. This was terror. Pure, raw, animal terror. He dropped the mop and ran. The executive boardroom doors flew open under his hands, and the scene hit him like a punch to the gut. Victoria Langford lay on the floor. Her lips were blue. Her chest wasn't moving. 7 executives stood around her like statues in expensive suits. "Call 911!" a woman shrieked. Nobody moved. "Is this a joke?" a man muttered. "Victoria, get up." Nobody moved. Marcus pushed through them. A hand grabbed his shoulder. "What are you doing? You're the janitor." He shook it off and dropped to his knees beside her, pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Nothing. "She's not breathing," Marcus said. "Call 911, now." "Who the hell are you to give orders?" Marcus tilted her head back, pinched her nose, leaned down. "Oh my God!" someone screamed. "He's kissing her." He sealed his mouth over hers and breathed. Once, twice. Her chest rose with his air. He locked his hands over her sternum and started compressions. "Get him off her. 1, 2, 3. Something cracked across his back. Pain exploded through his spine. "You filthy janitor. 4, 5, 6. Another blow. His shoulder. He felt something pop. "Don't touch her." He kept counting, kept pressing. "Security. Get security. 7, 8, 9. Someone grabbed his collar, yanked him backward. He tore himself free so hard his shirt ripped. 10, 11, 12. Who let this animal in here? 13, 14, 15. His arms burned. His back screamed. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. He leaned down. 2 more breaths. Come on, lady. Don't die on me." Back to compressions. His hands were numb, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. "The paramedics are coming. Get him away from her. 28, 29, 30. Victoria's chest jerked. Her body convulsed. And then she sucked in air like a drowning woman breaking the surface. Her eyes flew open. She coughed. She was breathing. Marcus collapsed backward, shaking, bleeding, broken. He'd done it. The executives swarmed her now, all of them suddenly concerned, suddenly involved, pushing Marcus aside like garbage. "Victoria, can you hear me? Get her water. Where are the paramedics?" Marcus sat on the floor, invisible again. Blood dripped from his eyebrow onto the carpet. His hands trembled. His whole body trembled. A paramedic burst through the door, then another. They took over professional and fast. One turned around. "Who started CPR?" "I did," Marcus said. The paramedic looked at him. Really looked at him. "You saved her life, man." Before Marcus could respond, a voice cut through the room like a blade. "What's your name?" "Richard Harmon, CFO. Silver hair, cold eyes, face like a fist." "Marcus Webb, night cleaning crew." "You put your mouth on Miss Langford." "She wasn't breathing. I performed CPR." Richard stepped closer. His voice dropped low, meant only for Marcus. "I saw what you did, and I'm going to make sure everyone else sees something very different." Marcus's blood went cold. "What? You're a janitor. A nobody. Who do you think they're going to believe? Richard smiled. It was the ugliest thing Marcus had ever seen. Go home, Mr. Webb. Enjoy your last night of peace. He turned and walked away, already pulling out his phone. Marcus stood there bleeding confused, watching Richard disappear into the chaos. What the hell just happened? The hallway was empty. Marcus leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His back was on fire. His shoulder throbbed. The cut above his eye had stopped bleeding, but his whole face felt wrong. He'd saved her life. Why did it feel like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his phone buzzed. A text from Delia. Sophie's asking when you're coming home. Everything okay? Marcus stared at the screen. His daughter, 7 years old, waiting for him in their tiny apartment, probably clutching that ragged teddy bear she refused to let go of since Lisa died. On my way, he typed back. Long night. He grabbed his mop bucket and headed for the service elevator. The building felt different now, hostile, like it knew something he didn't. In the lobby, the night security guard looked up from his phone. Damn, Marcus. What happened to you? Woman collapsed in the boardroom. I gave her CPR. Wait, the CEO, Victoria Langford. Yeah. The guard let out a low whistle. You saved the boss's life, man. They're gonna give you a medal or something. Marcus tried to smile. Somehow I doubt that. Outside, the Chicago wind hit him like a wall of ice. He'd missed the last bus. Of course he had. He started walking, 20 blocks, in the freezing cold, with a broken body and a bad feeling that wouldn't go away. By the time he reached his neighborhood, his legs felt like rubber. The streets had changed around him. Glass towers giving way to brick buildings, manicured sidewalks to cracked concrete coffee shops to liquor stores. Home. Delia was waiting at his door, 73 years old, silver hair pulled back, eyes that had seen enough hardship to spot it from a mile away. Lord have mercy. She grabbed his arm. Marcus, what happened to you? I'm fine. Boy, don't you lie to me. You look like you got jumped. Something like that. He leaned against the doorframe. Is Sophie asleep? 2 hours ago. She drew you a picture, taped it to the fridge. Marcus closed his eyes. His daughter, drawing pictures for him while he was getting beaten for saving someone's life. What happened? Delia asked again, softer this time. A woman collapsed at work. Rich woman, CEO of the whole company. She stopped breathing. Nobody did anything. Just stood there in their $1,000 suits watching her die. And you? I did CPR. Saved her life. Delia's eyes narrowed. And they beat you for it. The executives. They thought I was attacking her, I guess. Contaminating her. Contaminating. Delia spat the word like poison. Because you're black. Because you're poor. Because you clean their toilets. All of the above. And now what? They thanked you, gave you a raise. Marcus laughed. It came out bitter and broken. The CFO told me to enjoy my last night of peace. Delia went quiet. Her hand tightened on his arm. That man, she said slowly, he got power. He's got all the power. Then you need to be careful, son. Men like that, they don't make threats. They make promises. Marcus nodded. He was too tired to argue, too tired to think. Get some sleep, Delia said. Whatever's coming, it can wait until morning. But Marcus knew in his gut, in his bones, in the part of him that had learned a long time ago not to trust the world, that whatever was coming couldn't wait. It was already here. Inside the apartment, everything was quiet. Marcus stood in the doorway of Sophie's room watching her sleep. She looked so small in that bed, so fragile. Her teddy bear was tucked under her chin, one arm wrapped around it like she was protecting it from the world. He knelt beside her and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Hey, baby girl, he whispered. Daddy's home. She didn't wake, just sighed and pulled the teddy bear closer. Marcus kissed her forehead and backed out of the room. In the kitchen, he found the picture taped to the fridge. Sophie had drawn their family hymn, her and a figure in the sky that was supposed to be Lisa. An angel, Sophie always said, watching over them. Marcus touched the drawing with one finger. "I'm trying, Lisa," he murmured. "I'm trying so hard." His phone buzzed. A text from Danny, another janitor on the night shift. "Bro, you need to see this." A link followed. Marcus clicked it. His stomach dropped. The headline screamed at him in bold letters. "Shocking janitor, caught kissing unconscious CEO in boardroom." Below the headline was a video. Grainy security footage. Marcus leaning down toward Victoria Langford's face. His mouth meeting hers. No context. No explanation. Just a poor black man putting his mouth on a rich white woman. He scrolled down. The comments were a sewer. "Disgusting predator. Fire him and lock him up. This is why you can't trust these people. She was unconscious, and he kissed her. That's assault." Marcus's hands started shaking. He'd been performing CPR, the rescue breaths that kept her alive, and they had edited the footage to make it look like an attack. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Danny. "It's everywhere, bro. Facebook, Twitter, news sites. Everyone's talking about it. They're saying you assaulted her." Marcus dropped the phone like it burned him. Richard Harmon's voice echoed in his skull. "Who do you think they're going to believe?" He stumbled to the bathroom and gripped the sink, staring at his reflection. Blood on his face, bruises on his neck, eyes that looked 1,000 years old. "I saved her life," he said to the mirror. "I did the right thing." The mirror didn't answer. Neither did the world. Marcus didn't sleep. He sat on the couch in the dark, refreshing the search results on his phone, watching the story spread like a disease. By midnight, the video had 100,000 views. By 2 a.m., 500,000. By 5 a.m., when the first gray light started creeping through the windows, 2 million people had watched Marcus Webb assault Victoria Langford. 2 million people who didn't know him, who would never know him, who had already decided who he was based on 30 seconds of edited footage. His phone rang at 7. "Mr. Webb, this is Human Resources at Langford Industries. We need you to come in for a meeting regarding your employment status, 9 o'clock. The line went dead. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed. His body ached everywhere. His shoulder had swollen overnight. His back was a map of bruises, but the physical pain was nothing. Nothing compared to what was happening inside his chest. Sophie appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why are you up so early?" "I have a meeting, baby." "At work?" "Yeah, at work." She padded over and climbed into his lap. He held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, trying to memorize the weight of her small body against his chest. "Daddy, yeah, you smell sad." Marcus almost laughed. Almost. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just tired. You should sleep more." "I know." She pulled back and looked at him with Lisa's eyes. Serious. Too old for 7. "Daddy, you're the best daddy in the whole world. You know that, right?" Something cracked inside Marcus's chest. "I know, baby. Thank you." "Don't forget." "I won't." He kissed her forehead and set her down. "Delia's going to take you to school today, okay?" "Okay." He grabbed his jacket and walked out the door. The Langford Industries building looked different in daylight. Taller, colder, a monument of glass and steel, reaching toward a sky that didn't care about men like Marcus. He walked through the front door. The security guard stopped him. "Mr. Webb, I have a meeting with HR." The guard's expression was unreadable. "Third floor. They're expecting you." Marcus rode the elevator alone. His reflection stared back at him from every wall. A tired man in a cheap shirt. A walking dead man who didn't know it yet. The HR director was waiting in a conference room with no windows. "Mr. Webb, please sit down." Marcus sat. She opened a folder without looking at him. Following last night's incident, an internal review has been conducted. Based on the available evidence, Langford Industries has determined that your actions constituted inappropriate conduct involving a senior executive. I was performing CPR. She wasn't breathing. That may be your interpretation. It's not an interpretation. It's what happened. There were witnesses. The paramedics. The decision has been made, Mr. Webb. By who? Silence. Marcus leaned forward. Was it Richard Harmon? Did he make this decision? The HR director's face flickered, just for a second, but Marcus saw it. Your employment is terminated effective immediately, she continued. Your final paycheck will be mailed. We will not be pressing charges at this time. Charges? Marcus's voice rose. For what? For saving someone's life. Please collect your belongings from security and exit the building. I want to see Miss Langford. She knows what I did. Miss Langford is recovering at a private facility. She has not been involved in this decision. Then let her be involved. Let her see the real footage. Let her... This meeting is over, Mr. Webb. Marcus stood up slowly. His hands were shaking. His jaw was tight enough to crack. You know this is wrong, he said quietly. Everyone in this building knows this is wrong. The HR director said nothing. Marcus walked out. Past the staring faces. Past the whispered accusations. Past the security guards who escorted him like a criminal. Out into the cold Chicago morning. He stood on the sidewalk looking up at the glass tower. 3 years. 3 years he'd worked in that building. Never late. Never complained. Never caused a moment of trouble. And this was how it ended. A lie. A deliberate, calculated, manufactured lie. Richard Harmon had promised to destroy him, and he'd done it in less than 12 hours. The next 2 weeks were hell. Marcus applied for every job he could find. Cleaning companies, restaurants, delivery services, warehouses, anything. The answer was always the same. We've seen the news, Mr. Webb. We can't take that risk. Maybe try somewhere else. His face was everywhere. The video had mutated, spawning think pieces and hot takes and social media posts that called him everything from a predator to a symptom of a broken society. His name was Poison. The landlord came on a Thursday. Marcus, I like you. I do. But I got other tenants complaining. They seen the news. They don't want their kids in the same building as... As what? The landlord couldn't meet his eyes. You got 3 weeks. I'm sorry. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to find money he didn't have for a home he was about to lose while raising a daughter who had started coming home from school in tears. The other kids are saying mean things, Daddy. What kind of things? They say you hurt a lady. They say you're a bad man. Marcus held her and tried not to fall apart. I didn't hurt anyone, baby. Sometimes people believe things that aren't true. But why? Why would they lie? I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Marcus sat in the dark kitchen. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His body was shutting down. He could feel it happening, the weakness, the fog, the slow surrender of a system that had nothing left to fight with. Delia found him the next morning. He was on the floor, burning with fever, too weak to stand. Marcus! She grabbed his face. Marcus, can you hear me? He tried to speak, couldn't. Hold on, baby, hold on. She called 911. As the sirens grew closer, Marcus forced his eyes open. Delia was crying. He'd never seen her cry before. Don't let them win, he whispered. Promise me. Don't let them win. I promise. Tell Sophie. Tell her I tried. You're going to tell her yourself. You hear me? You're going to... The paramedics burst through the door, and Marcus's world went black. Somewhere across the city, in a private hospital suite with windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Victoria Langford woke up screaming. The nightmare again, the darkness, the suffocation, the voice pulling her back. Come on, breathe, come back. She sat up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. 4 nights in a row now. The same dream, the same voice. Who was he? The doctors had told her someone performed CPR. Someone kept her heart beating until the paramedics arrived. Someone saved her life. But every time she asked who, she got the same answer. It's been handled, Miss Langford. The situation has been addressed. You don't need to worry about it. Victoria Langford had built a billion-dollar empire by asking questions nobody wanted to answer. And right now, there was one question that wouldn't let her sleep. She picked up her phone and dialed. Marcus, security. I want the full, unedited footage from the boardroom, the morning I collapsed. Ma'am, HR has already... I didn't ask what HR did. I want that footage in my inbox within the hour. Yes, ma'am. She hung up and stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, a man had saved her life, and she had a terrible feeling that her company had destroyed him for it. The footage arrived in Victoria's inbox at 3:47 a.m. She sat up in the hospital bed, laptop balanced on her knees, and clicked play. The first thing she saw was herself, standing at the head of the conference table, confident, commanding, mid-sentence about quarterly projections. Then her hand flew to her chest. Her mouth opened, but no words came out, and she watched herself collapse like a puppet with cut strings. Victoria's breath caught. She'd never seen it before, never seen the moment her own body betrayed her. It was like watching a stranger die. The executives around her scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Panic, confusion, uselessness. Not a single one of them moved toward her. And then the door burst open. A man in a gray janitor's uniform sprinted into the room. He dropped to his knees beside her, checked her pulse, tilted her head back. Victoria leaned closer to the screen. She watched him breathe into her mouth. Once, twice. She watched him lock his hands over her chest and start compressions. And then she watched them attack him. Someone swung something at his back. He flinched but didn't stop. Another blow to his shoulder. He kept counting. Someone grabbed his collar and yanked him backward. He tore himself free and went right back to her chest. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. He kept going. Victoria's hand covered her mouth. She watched Richard Harmon approach, watched him lean down and say something to the janitor. The audio was muffled, but she could read the body language. The threat. The promise of destruction. She watched the janitor, Marcus. She reminded herself his name was Marcus, stand up slowly, bleeding broken, and walk out of the room without a single person thanking him. She watched Richard pull out his phone the moment Marcus was gone. Victoria closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking. For a long moment, she just sat there in the dark, listening to the beep of her heart monitor, trying to process what she'd just seen. A man had saved her life, and her company had crucified him for it. She picked up her phone and dialed. Fiona, I need you at the hospital, now. Ma'am, it's 4 a.m. I don't care what time it is. Get here. And bring everything you can find on an employee named Marcus Webb, night cleaning crew, former employee. They fired him. Fiona, they fired the man who saved my life, and I want to know exactly who made that decision and why. Silence on the other end. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Fiona said. Victoria hung up and stared at the ceiling. The nightmare made sense now. The voice pulling her back from the darkness. The hands pressing on her chest. The desperate counting that had kept her heart beating when it wanted to stop. That was Marcus. And she had let them destroy him without even knowing his name. Fiona arrived at 4:32 a.m. with a folder thick enough to choke on. She was Victoria's assistant, had been for 8 years, and she knew better than to ask questions when her boss had that look in her eyes. The look that said someone was about to pay for something. Tell me everything, Victoria said. Fiona opened the folder. Marcus James Webb, age 34, widower, single father to a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie. High school diploma, 1 year of community college nursing program, dropped out due to financial hardship. Employed by Langford Industries for 3 years. Night cleaning crew. Perfect attendance. No disciplinary issues. No complaints. And they fired him. Terminated for inappropriate conduct involving a senior executive. The decision was processed through HR, but the order came from Richard Harmon. Fiona nodded. The CFO signed off on it personally, within 6 hours of the incident. Victoria's jaw tightened. What else? The security footage was leaked to media outlets that same night, edited to remove context. By morning, it had gone viral. 2 million views in the first 24 hours. Who leaked it? I'm still tracking that down, but the IP address traces back to a device registered to Langford Industries. Executive floor. Victoria closed her eyes. Richard. It had to be Richard. He'd always been ambitious, always hungry for more power, more control. She'd promoted him to CFO 3 years ago because he got results, and she'd ignored the whispers about his methods because the numbers looked good. But this was something else entirely. There's more, Fiona said quietly. Tell me. Mr. Webb has been unable to find employment since the termination. His landlord issued an eviction notice last week. He's been selling personal belongings to keep up with bills. Fiona paused. And as of this morning, he was admitted to Chicago General Hospital. Severe exhaustion, malnutrition, dehydration. His immune system crashed. Victoria's stomach dropped. He's in the hospital. Yes, ma'am. His neighbor called 911. He collapsed in his apartment. Victoria threw off the blankets and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Ma'am, you're not supposed to. Get me discharged. Now. The doctors said, I don't care what the doctors said. Victoria stood up, gripping the bed rail for balance. A man saved my life, and my company destroyed him. I'm not going to sit in this bed while he's dying in another hospital across town. Fiona hesitated for only a moment. Then she nodded. I'll get your clothes. Chicago General was nothing like the private medical suite Victoria had just left. The hallways were crowded. The lights were harsh. The smell of antiseptic mixed with something older, sadder, the smell of people who couldn't afford to be sick. Victoria walked through the emergency department in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked like any other worried visitor. Nobody recognized her. That was intentional. Marcus Webb, she told the nurse at the station. He was admitted this morning. The nurse checked her computer. Are you family? I'm his employer. Only family members. I'm also the reason he's here. Victoria's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. Please, I need to see him. Something in her face must have convinced the nurse because she sighed and pointed down the hall. Room 412. But he's not conscious. His daughter is with him. Victoria's chest tightened. His daughter. 7 years old, Fiona had said. Named Sophie. She walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. Room 408, 410, 412. The door was open. Victoria stopped in the doorway and looked inside. Marcus lay on the bed, eyes closed, face gaunt. An oxygen tube ran under his nose. IV fluids dripped into his arm. He looked smaller than she remembered, though she barely remembered anything from that night. Just darkness. Just falling. Beside the bed in a plastic chair too big for her sat a little girl. She had her father's eyes, dark and serious. Too old for her face. She was holding his hand. Victoria knocked softly on the doorframe. The girl looked up. Her eyes went wide. You're the lady, she whispered. The lady from the billboard. Victoria stepped into the room. Yes, I am. My daddy saved you. I know. Victoria's voice cracked. That's why I'm here. The girl studied her for a long moment, measuring her, deciding something. He's sick, she said finally. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He kept saying it wasn't fair, and then he just stopped. Victoria knelt down so she was at eye level with the child. What's your name? Sophie. Sophie, I'm Victoria, and I want you to know something. She took a breath. What happened to your father, what people said about him? It wasn't true. None of it was true. He saved my life, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Sophie's lip trembled. Promise? I promise. Because he's the best daddy in the whole world, and he didn't do anything wrong. He just tried to help. Victoria felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back. I know, sweetheart. I know. She stood and walked to the bedside. Marcus's face was pale drawn, marked with exhaustion that went deeper than physical. She reached down and took his hand, the hand that had pressed against her chest, counting fighting, refusing to let her die. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. His fingers didn't move, but she held on anyway. The doctor came in an hour later. Miss Langford. He looked surprised. I didn't realize you were... How is he? The doctor glanced at his chart. Severe exhaustion, malnutrition, dehydration. His body essentially shut down from prolonged stress. We've got him on fluids and nutrients, and his vitals are stabilizing, but... But what? He's also showing signs of acute depression. The psychological toll has been significant. Whatever happened to this man, it broke something inside him. Victoria nodded slowly. What does he need? Rest, nutrition, support, time. The doctor paused. And honestly, Hope. People can recover from physical trauma fairly quickly. But when someone loses the will to fight... He shook his head. That's harder to treat. Can he be moved? Not for at least 48 hours. Why? Because when he's stable, I'm transferring him to Northside Medical. Private room. Best care available. The doctor blinked. That's very generous. It's the least I can do. After the doctor left, Victoria pulled out her phone and started making calls. First to Fiona. I want Marcus Webb's medical bills paid. All of them, past and future. Set up a fund if you have to. Second to her real estate manager. I need a furnished apartment, safe neighborhood, good school district, 3 bedrooms, have it ready within 48 hours. Third to her head of security. Find out exactly who leaked that footage. I want names, dates, and evidence, and I want Richard Harmon's access to all company systems revoked immediately. Ma'am, he's the CFO. Not for much longer. She hung up and looked at Marcus's sleeping face. She'd built $1 billion company on the principle that actions have consequences. That accountability matters. That the people at the top have a responsibility to the people at the bottom. Somewhere along the way she'd forgotten that. Richard Harmon had used her company, her name, to destroy an innocent man. And she'd been so focused on recovery, so insulated by her own power, that she hadn't even noticed. That ended now. Marcus woke up slowly, like swimming through mud. The first thing he saw was a ceiling. White, clean, unfamiliar. The second thing he saw was Victoria Langford sitting in a chair beside his bed. He blinked. Blinked again. Am I dead? Victoria almost smiled. No. You're not dead. Then I'm dreaming. You're not dreaming either. Marcus tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his body, and he fell back against the pillows. Easy. Victoria's hand touched his arm. You've been out for almost 2 days. Your body needs time. Where's Sophie? She's with your neighbor, Delia. I had them move to a hotel nearby, somewhere safe and comfortable while you recover. Marcus stared at her. His brain was struggling to catch up. I don't understand. Why are you here? Victoria took a breath. Because I watched the footage. The real footage. All of it. Marcus went still. I saw what you did, she continued. I saw you fight for my life while everyone else stood there doing nothing. I saw them beat you. I saw Richard Harmon threaten you. and I saw my company throw you away like garbage." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "I didn't know, Marcus. I swear to you I didn't know. They kept it from me. They handled it without my input. And by the time I was well enough to ask questions, the damage was already done." Marcus turned his head away. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why, I'm nobody. I'm just the janitor who cleans your floors. You're the man who saved my life." Victoria leaned forward. "Do you understand that I was dead? My heart had stopped. And you brought me back. You breathed for me. You kept my blood pumping when my own body had given up. And then your people destroyed me for it." "Yes, they did. And I am going to spend however long it takes making that right." Marcus finally looked at her. His eyes were hollow empty in a way that made Victoria's chest ache. "How the video is everywhere. Everyone thinks I'm a predator. I can't get a job. I can't pay my rent. I can't even walk down the street without people recognizing my face. I'm going to fix that. You can't fix what they think of me. Watch me." She pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. A press release drafted but not yet sent. "This goes out tomorrow morning. My personal statement with my signature clearing your name completely. It explains that you performed emergency CPR that saved my life, that the leaked footage was deliberately edited to misrepresent your actions, and that Langford Industries is conducting a full investigation into the individuals responsible." Marcus read it slowly. His hands were shaking. "You do this." "I've already done it. I'm just waiting for your permission to release it." "My permission? It's your story, Marcus. Your name, your reputation. I won't put it out there without you agreeing to it first." He stared at the phone for a long time. The words blurred in front of his eyes. "They called me disgusting," he said quietly. "They said I assaulted you. They said I was an animal who couldn't keep his hands to himself." "I know." "My daughter came home crying. Kids at school were telling her that her daddy was a bad man." "I know. I lost everything." His voice broke. "I did the right thing, and I lost everything." Victoria reached out and took his hand. "Then let me help you get it back." Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. She wasn't what he expected. On the billboards, she looked cold, untouchable, like a statue made of money and power. But here in this hospital room, she looked human, tired, guilty, real. "Why do you care?" he asked. "Because when I was lying on that floor dying, you were the only one who moved. Everyone else froze. Everyone else calculated risks and worried about liability and wondered what it would look like if they touched me." She squeezed his hand. "You just acted. You didn't think about consequences. You didn't worry about what people would say. You just tried to save a life. That's what anyone would do." "No, it's not. That's what a good person would do. And the world punished you for it." Marcus closed his eyes. For weeks he'd been drowning in accusations and rejections and the slow, crushing weight of injustice. He'd stopped eating because food tasted like ash. He'd stopped sleeping because every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, the executives, the HR director, the strangers on the internet who had decided he was a monster without ever knowing his name. He'd started to believe them, started to wonder if maybe he had done something wrong. Maybe he shouldn't have touched her. Maybe he should have just stood there like everyone else and let nature take its course. Maybe saving her life had been a mistake. But now here was Victoria Langford, the woman he'd saved, sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, telling him that he mattered. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. Release the statement. Tell the truth." Victoria nodded. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. People might not believe you." "They'll believe me, and if they don't, I'll make them believe." She stood up, but didn't let go of his hand. "There's something else," she said. "When you're well enough to leave the hospital, I want to offer you a job." Marcus laughed a hollow, broken sound. "Doing what, mopping floors?" "No, I want you to help me build something new. A department focused on employee welfare. making sure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else in my company. I don't have any qualifications for that. You have the only qualification that matters. You know what it feels like to be invisible, to be ignored, to be thrown away by a system that's supposed to protect you. Marcus shook his head. I don't know anything about running a department. Then learn. I'll give you the resources, the support, whatever you need. But the vision has to come from you, from someone who's lived it. Why me? Because you're the only person I trust to do it right. Marcus stared at her. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. I need time to think, he said finally. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. She let go of his hand and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and looked back. Marcus. Yeah. You saved my life. And I don't just mean the CPR. She paused. You reminded me what kind of person I want to be. What kind of company I want to run. I'd forgotten that somewhere along the way. So thank you. She left before he could respond. Marcus lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had just happened. 2 days ago, he'd been dying on his kitchen floor. Now the most powerful woman in Chicago was offering him a chance to rebuild his life. He thought about Sophie, about Delia, about all the nights he'd spent wondering how he was going to keep the lights on, keep food on the table, keep his daughter believing that her father was a good man. He thought about Lisa. What would she say if she could see him now? Keep fighting, Marcus. That's what she'd say. She always said that. Even at the end, when the cancer had taken everything else, she'd gripped his hand and told him to keep fighting. For Sophie. For himself. For the life they'd dreamed of building together. Marcus closed his eyes and let the tears fall. For the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of something else. Something that felt almost like hope. Across town in the executive suite of Langford Industries, Richard Harmon was having a very bad day. It started when his access badge stopped working. There must be some mistake, he told the security guard at the front desk. I'm the CFO. I'm sorry, sir. The system shows your credentials have been revoked. Revoked by who? The guard's face was carefully blank. I'm not authorized to say. Richard's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Victoria is back. She's asking for you. Conference room 1. Now. He read it 3 times. Victoria was supposed to be in the hospital for another week. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the office. She wasn't supposed to be asking questions. Something had gone very, very wrong. Richard straightened his tie and walked toward the elevator. The security guard had to badge him through a humiliation he filed away for later. The conference room was empty when he arrived. Just Victoria sitting at the head of the table, her laptop open in front of her. Richard, close the door. He did. Sit down. He sat. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. I watched the footage, she said. Richard's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral. The footage of your collapse that must have been difficult to see. The full footage, Richard, unedited. Silence. I saw what Marcus Webb did. I saw him save my life while everyone else stood there frozen. I saw him take blows to the back and shoulder while he was performing CPR. She paused. And I saw you threaten him. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. Richard leaned forward. Victoria, you have to understand. The optics of the situation. The optics. Her voice went cold. A man saved my life and you destroyed him because of optics. He's a janitor. He put his mouth on you. People were going to talk. People were going to talk about how he performed emergency CPR that kept me alive. That's not how it would have played in the media. You're right, because you made sure of that, didn't you? Victoria turned the laptop around. The leaked footage, the edited video, the anonymous tips to gossip sites. It all traces back to a device registered on this floor, your floor. Richard's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Victoria, I said don't lie to me. Her voice cracked like a whip. Richard flinched. You used my company to destroy an innocent man. You manufactured a scandal to protect yourself from questions about why no one in that room did anything to help me. You turned a hero into a villain because you were afraid of what it would look like if people found out that a janitor had more courage than 7 executives in $1,000 suits. Richard's mask finally cracked. I did what I had to do. You did what was easiest, and you didn't care who got hurt. He's nobody, Victoria. He cleans floors. In 6 months, everyone will have forgotten his name. Victoria stood up slowly. You're fired. Richard blinked. What? Effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Security will escort you out of the building. Your severance will be determined by legal. You can't do this. I just did. The board won't allow it. The board answers to me. And when they see what you did, when they see the evidence I've compiled, they're not going to protect you, Richard. They're going to distance themselves as fast as they can. Richard's face twisted. The polished executive facade crumbled, revealing something ugly underneath. You're making a mistake, he said. A huge mistake. That janitor isn't worth your career. His name is Marcus, and he's worth more than your entire career. She pressed a button on the conference phone. Security. Please escort Mr. Harmon out of the building. The door opened. 2 guards stepped in. Richard stood slowly, his hands shaking with rage. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. He walked out between the guards, and the door closed behind him. Victoria sat back down. Her hands were trembling. Her heart was pounding. She'd just fired her CFO, a man who had been with the company for 12 years, who knew every secret, every weakness, every vulnerability. He would retaliate. She knew that. He would try to burn everything down on his way out. But she didn't care. For the first time in years, she felt like she was doing something right. She picked up her phone and called Fiona. Release the statement. Yes, ma'am. Victoria hung up and looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there in a hospital room across town, a man was waking up to a second chance, and she was going to make sure he got it. The statement hit the internet at 6:00 a.m. By 6:15 it was trending. By 7:00, every major news outlet in Chicago had picked it up. By noon, the story had gone national. Victoria Langford's words cut through the noise like a blade. On the night of November 14th, I suffered sudden cardiac arrest during a board meeting. I was clinically dead. My heart had stopped. I was not breathing. And while 7 executives stood frozen, a man named Marcus Webb, a member of our night cleaning crew, performed CPR that saved my life. In the days that followed, Mr. Webb was terminated. His reputation was destroyed by deliberately edited footage leaked to media outlets. He was branded a predator, an assailant, a criminal, when in fact, he was the only person in that room with the courage to act. I am personally and publicly clearing Mr. Webb's name. His actions were heroic, his termination was unjust, and the individuals responsible for this manufactured scandal are being held accountable. To Marcus Webb, I owe you my life. I am deeply sorry for what my company put you through, and I am committed to making this right. Marcus read the statement on his phone, sitting up in his hospital bed. He read it again, then a third time. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Sophie sat beside him, eating pudding from a plastic cup, oblivious to the earthquake happening on the screen. "Daddy, are you crying?" Marcus wiped his eyes quickly. "No, baby, just tired." "You're always tired." "I know, but I'm going to get better now." Sophie looked at him with those serious eyes, Lisa's eyes, and nodded slowly. "Good. Because I need you to take me to the park. You promised." "I did promise, didn't I?" 3 weeks ago, before everything got bad. Marcus pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "As soon as I get out of here, we're going to the park. I promise." "Pinky promise?" He held out his pinky. She wrapped hers around it. "Pinky promise." His phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started buzzing non-stop. Messages, dozens of them, from old coworkers, from neighbors, from people he hadn't heard from in years. "Marcus, I just saw the news. I'm so sorry I believed what they said about you. Bro, I knew something was wrong with that video. I should have said something. We're praying for you, son. The truth always comes out." And then from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Webb, this is Sarah Chen from the Chicago Tribune. We'd love to interview you about your story. Please call us at your earliest convenience." Marcus stared at the message. 3 weeks ago, the media had torn him apart. Now, they wanted to hear his side. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he did both. Delia arrived at the hospital that afternoon with a bag full of Marcus's clothes and a look on her face that said she had things to say. "I saw the news," she announced, settling into the chair beside his bed. "That billionaire woman went on TV this morning, told everybody what really happened." "I know. I saw the statement." "Statement?" Delia waved her hand dismissively. "I'm talking about the interview. She sat down with Channel 7 and told them everything. How you saved her life. How that snake Richard Harmon edited the footage. How they fired you for being a hero." Marcus blinked. "She did an interview. Live television, baby. Looked right into the camera and said you were the bravest man she'd ever met." Marcus didn't know what to say. "She also said she fired that Harmon man," Delia continued. "Walked him right out of the building in front of everybody. Security and all. She told me she was going to." Delia leaned forward. "And what else did she tell you?" Marcus hesitated. "She offered me a job." "What kind of job?" "Something about employee welfare. Building a department that makes sure people like me don't get thrown away by the system." Delia's eyebrows shot up. "And what did you say?" "I said I needed time to think." "Time to think?" Delia smacked his arm. "Boy, are you crazy. A billionaire offers you a job and you need time to think. It's not that simple, Delia." "What's not simple about it?" "You need work. She's offering work. What's there to think about?" Marcus looked down at his hands, the hands that had pressed against Victoria's chest, the hands that had saved a life and then been branded as weapons. "What if I'm not good enough?" Delia's expression softened. "Marcus James Webb, look at me." He looked. "You raised a beautiful daughter all by yourself. You worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over her head. You held your wife's hand when she passed, and you didn't fall apart, even though I know you wanted to. And when everybody else in that fancy boardroom stood there like statues, you got down on your knees and fought for a stranger's life." She reached out and took his hand. "If that's not good enough, then I don't know what is." Marcus's throat tightened. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if I fail? What if I make it worse? Then you fail, and you get back up, just like you've done every single time life knocked you down." Delia squeezed his hand. "But you don't quit before you even try. That's not who you are." Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about Sophie, about the promise he'd made to Lisa before she died, about all the nights he'd spent wondering if he was enough. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll take the job." Delia smiled a real smile, the kind he hadn't seen on her face in months. "That's my boy." 3 days later, Marcus walked out of the hospital. The sunlight hit his face, and he stopped just breathing. The air tasted different, cleaner, like the world had been washed while he was inside. A black car was waiting at the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. "Mr. Webb, Miss Langford sent me." Marcus hesitated. "I can take the bus." "She said you'd say that." The driver smiled. "She also said to tell you that the bus doesn't go where we're going." Marcus looked at the car, then at Delia and Sophie standing beside him. "Where exactly are we going?" "Home, sir. Your new home." Sophie's eyes went wide. We have a new home. The driver nodded. 3 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, good school nearby. Miss Langford arranged everything. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. He'd spent the last 3 years in that cramped apartment. Roaches in the walls. Heater that barely worked. Windows that let in the cold, no matter how many towels he stuffed around the edges. And now, "Daddy." Sophie tugged at his sleeve. "Can we go see it?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, at the hope shining in her eyes. "Yeah, baby, let's go see it." The drive took 30 minutes. The neighborhoods changed outside the window, familiar streets giving way to cleaner blocks, nicer buildings, trees that weren't dead or dying. When the car finally stopped, Marcus stepped out and looked up at the building. It wasn't fancy. Wasn't a mansion or a penthouse or anything like the towers downtown. Just a solid brick building with clean windows and a little garden out front. But to Marcus, it looked like a palace. "This is ours," Sophie whispered. "This is ours." Delia came up beside him, leaning on her walker. Her eyes were wet. "Lord have mercy," she murmured. "Lord have mercy." They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and something sweet, cookies maybe, or flowers. Marcus stopped in front of apartment 3B. The key was in his pocket. Victoria's assistant had given it to him at the hospital, along with all the paperwork. Lease paid for a year, utilities covered, everything taken care of. He slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door swung open. Sophie ran inside first. Marcus heard her gasp. "Daddy, there's a real kitchen, and a couch, and oh my gosh, I have my own room." Her footsteps thundered down the hallway as she explored. Marcus walked in slowly. The apartment was beautiful. Simple, but beautiful. Clean walls, warm lighting, furniture that didn't smell like mold or look like it had been rescued from a dumpster. On the kitchen counter sat a vase of white daisies. A card was tucked underneath. Marcus picked it up and read, "You deserve peace. VL." His hands trembled as he set the card down. Delia appeared beside him. "That woman's got a good heart." "She's just trying to make things right." Maybe. But she didn't have to do all this. She could have written a check and moved on. Instead, she's treating you like family. Marcus didn't respond. He just stood there looking around at the apartment that was somehow his now. 3 weeks ago, he'd been dying on his kitchen floor. Now he was standing in a new home with his daughter laughing down the hallway and his neighbor crying tears of joy beside him. It didn't feel real. But it was. That night, after Sophie was asleep in her new bed with the purple sheets she'd picked out, Marcus sat on the couch and called Victoria. She answered on the 2nd ring. "Marcus, how's the apartment?" "It's..." He searched for the right word. "It's too much. It's exactly enough. Victoria, I can't repay you for any of this. I'm not asking you to repay me. I'm asking you to accept it." Marcus leaned back against the couch cushions. "Why are you doing all this?" "I already told you." "You told me you wanted to make things right. But this isn't just making things right. This is... I don't even know what this is." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "When I was lying on that floor," she said finally, "I had a moment of clarity, the kind you only get when you're dying. And in that moment, I saw my whole life laid out in front of me, the company, the money, the power. And you know what I realized?" "What?" "None of it mattered, not a single bit of it. I'd spent 30 years building an empire, and in my last moment of consciousness, I couldn't think of a single thing I'd done that actually meant something." Marcus heard her take a breath. "And then you were there. A stranger, a janitor. Someone I'd never even noticed in 3 years of walking past you in the hallways. And you didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate the risks or worry about what people would think. You just saved me." "Anyone would have done the same thing." "No, they wouldn't. I was in a room full of highly educated, highly successful people, and not one of them moved. But you did. Because you're different, Marcus. Because you're good in a way that most people aren't. Marcus felt his eyes burning. I'm not good, he said quietly. I'm just ordinary. There's nothing ordinary about you, and I'm going to spend however long it takes proving that to you. Marcus closed his eyes. The job you offered me, he said. I want to take it. Are you sure? No, but I'm going to do it anyway. Good. Come to the office tomorrow. We'll talk about what comes next. Victoria. Yes. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. The hard part is just beginning. She hung up. Marcus sat in the dark listening to the quiet sounds of the apartment. Sophie's soft breathing from down the hall. The hum of the refrigerator. The distant murmur of traffic outside. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than fear. He felt ready. The next morning, Marcus put on the only suit he owned, the one he'd worn to Lisa's funeral, and took the bus downtown. The Langford Industries building looked different in daylight. Or maybe he looked different. He wasn't sure. The security guard at the front desk smiled when he saw him. Mr. Webb, welcome back. Thanks, Mike. Miss Langford's expecting you. Executive floor. She said to go right up. Marcus rode the elevator alone. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls, a tired man in a cheap suit heading toward something he didn't fully understand. But this time, he wasn't afraid. Victoria was waiting in her office. She stood when he entered and gestured to a chair across from her desk. How do you feel? Nervous. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. She slid a folder across the desk. Marcus opened it and found a job description, a proposed salary, and a list of responsibilities that made his head spin. Director of Employee Welfare Initiative, he read aloud. That sounds important. It is important. You'll be responsible for building a department from the ground up, developing policies that protect workers from the kind of treatment you experienced, creating systems that catch problems before they become crises. I don't have any experience with this kind of thing. You have the only experience that matters. You know what it feels like to be invisible, to be ignored, to be thrown away by a system that's supposed to protect you. That doesn't make me qualified. It makes you essential. Victoria leaned forward. Marcus, I can hire 100 consultants with MBAs and decades of experience, but none of them would understand. Truly understand what it's like to be on the bottom looking up. You do. That's why I need you. Marcus stared at the folder in his hands. What if I fail? Then we figure out what went wrong and try again. That's how progress works. And if people don't respect me, if they see me as just the janitor who got promoted because he saved the boss's life? Victoria's expression hardened. Then I'll make it very clear that disrespecting you is the same as disrespecting me, and nobody in this company wants that. Marcus looked up at her. You're serious about this? I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He took a deep breath, let it out slowly. Okay, where do I start? Victoria smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. Follow me. She led him down the hallway to a set of double doors. Through the glass, Marcus could see an empty office floor, wide windows, sunlight streaming in, fresh paint on the walls. This is yours, Victoria said. The entire floor. Whatever you need, furniture, staff, equipment, just say the word. Marcus pushed open the doors and walked inside. His footsteps echoed in the empty space. It's big, he said. You'll fill it. He walked to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline. The city stretched out below him, alive with movement and noise and possibility. 3 weeks ago, he'd been cleaning the floors of this building. Now he was standing in an office that belonged to him. I don't know where to start, he admitted. Start with what you know. What's the first thing you would have wanted when you were working night shifts? The first thing that would have made your life easier? Marcus thought about it. Respect, he said finally. I would have wanted someone to treat me like a human being instead of a piece of furniture. Then that's where we start. Build a culture of respect. Everything else follows from that. Marcus nodded slowly. I have one condition, he said. Name it. The people who work for me, the ones I hire, the ones I train, they have to be like me. People who've been at the bottom. People who know what it feels like. No consultants in expensive suits telling workers how to feel. Real people who understand. Victoria's smile widened. I wouldn't have it any other way. She held out her hand. Marcus shook it. Welcome to Langford Industries Director Webb. Thank you, Miss Langford. Victoria. Call me Victoria. Thank you, Victoria. She let go of his hand and headed for the door. One more thing, she said, pausing at the threshold. What? Richard Harmon. He's not going to take his termination quietly. He has connections, resources, and he's angry. I know. He might come after you, try to dig up dirt, make your life difficult. Marcus turned to face her. Let him try. I've survived worse. Victoria studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. Yes, you have. She left, and Marcus was alone in his new office. He walked to the window and pressed his palm against the glass. Below him, the city hummed with life. People rushing to work, cars honking, pigeons circling above the rooftops. Somewhere down there in a neighborhood he used to call home, there were people just like him. Invisible people, forgotten people, people who worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent, people who got sick and couldn't afford to see a doctor, people who played by the rules and got punished for it. He was going to fight for them. He didn't know how yet, didn't know what policies to write or what systems to build or what battles he'd have to win. But he knew why. Because someone had to. Because nobody else would. Because he'd spent his whole life being invisible, and now he had a chance to make sure others didn't suffer the same fate. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Delia. How's Sophie? Playing with her new toys. She's fine. How are you? I'm good. Delia, I'm really good. You took the job. I took the job. Well, praise the Lord. He could hear her smiling through the phone. Lisa would be proud of you, Marcus. Real proud. Marcus closed his eyes. I hope so. I know so. Now stop crying and get to work. You've got a world to change. Yes, ma'am. He hung up and turned back to the empty office. His chance, his fight. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Marcus watched the light fade and felt something settle inside him. He wasn't the same man who had walked into that boardroom 3 weeks ago. That man had been invisible, powerless, afraid. This man was different. This man had survived. This man was ready. Richard Harmon sat in his penthouse apartment drinking scotch and staring at the television. Every channel was talking about Marcus Webb, the hero janitor, the man who saved Victoria Langford's life, the victim of a corporate conspiracy. And every channel was talking about Richard Harmon, the villain, the monster, the man who tried to destroy an innocent worker to protect his own reputation. His phone had been ringing all day. Reporters, former colleagues, people who had once called him friend, suddenly unable to remember his number. He'd lost everything. His job, his reputation, his power. Because of a janitor. Richard set down his glass and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Jenkins, private investigator. The kind of man who didn't ask questions and didn't leave traces. He typed a message. I need everything you can find on Marcus Webb. Debts, criminal history, family secrets. Anything that can be used. The response came 30 seconds later. That'll cost you. Richard typed back. I don't care what it costs, just get it done. He set the phone down and picked up his scotch. Victoria thought she'd won. Thought she could fire him and clear that janitor's name and everything would be fine. She was wrong. Richard Harmon hadn't clawed his way to the top by accepting defeat. He'd done it by destroying everyone who stood in his way. And Marcus Webb had just put himself directly in the crosshairs. Richard smiled into his glass. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first employee walked into Marcus's office on a Tuesday morning. Her name was Rosa Mendez. 53 years old, 22 years with the company, cafeteria worker. She sat across from Marcus with her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. "You wanted to see me, sir? Please call me Marcus." He leaned forward. "And I'm the one who should be thanking you for coming. I know it's not easy to talk about these things." Rosa looked up. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying recently. "I heard what happened to you," she said quietly. "What they did. How they tried to destroy you. I heard what happened to you too. That's why I asked you here." Rosa's hands tightened in her lap. "It's nothing. Being forced to work double shifts without overtime pay isn't nothing. Being threatened with termination every time you ask for a day off isn't nothing." "How did you know about that?" "I've been talking to people, listening. That's my job now." Rosa studied him for a long moment, measuring, deciding. "Mr. Webb Marcus, I've been working here for 22 years. I've seen things, bad things, managers who treat us like animals, supervisors who scream at us in front of customers, women who get touched and told to keep quiet if they want to keep their jobs." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "And nobody does anything. Who's going to believe us? We're cafeteria workers, cleaners, maintenance crew. We're invisible." "You're not invisible to me." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "I have 3 grandchildren," she said. "I need this job. If I complain, if I make trouble, you won't lose your job. I promise you that." "How can you promise that?" "Because Victoria Langford created this department specifically to protect people like you, and she gave me the authority to do whatever it takes." Rosa wiped her eyes. "I want to believe you." "Then believe me. And if you know anyone else who's been treated badly, anyone who's afraid to speak up, tell them to come see me. Everything they say stays confidential. No retaliation, no consequences." Rosa nodded slowly. "There are others, many others. Send them to me, all of them." She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "Mr. Webb." "Yes." "Thank you for fighting for us." Marcus smiled. "That's what I'm here for." Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus's office became a confession booth. They came one by one, then 2 by 2, then in small groups. Workers from every department: cleaners, security guards, kitchen staff, warehouse workers, people who had spent years being invisible suddenly given a voice. Marcus listened to them all. He heard about supervisors who demanded sexual favors in exchange for favorable schedules, about managers who docked pay for bathroom breaks, about safety violations that were covered up because fixing them would cost money, about workers who got injured on the job and were fired before they could file claims. Each story was worse than the last. Each story reminded him why he was here. He started building files, documentation, evidence, names and dates and witnesses who could corroborate. Fiona stopped by his office one afternoon with coffee and a concerned expression. "You're working too hard," she said. "There's too much work to do." "Victoria asked me to check on you. She's worried." "Tell her I'm fine." Fiona set down the coffee and sat across from him. "Marcus, can I be honest with you? Please. What you're doing, what you're uncovering, it's going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. People with power. People who've benefited from the way things were." "I know. Some of them are going to fight back." "Let them." Fiona leaned forward. "I'm serious. There are executives in this company who've built their entire careers on exploiting the people beneath them. When you start holding them accountable, they're not going to go quietly. I'm not asking them to go quietly. I'm asking them to change or get out. And if they choose to fight... Marcus met her eyes. Then I fight back harder. The first attack came 2 weeks later. Marcus was in his office reviewing personnel files when his phone buzzed. A news alert. He clicked on it and felt his stomach drop. Hero janitors troubled past juvenile arrest record surfaces. The article was short but devastating. It detailed a sealed juvenile record from when Marcus was 16, a shoplifting arrest. Nothing major, nothing violent, just a kid who'd stolen cough medicine for his sick mother because he couldn't afford it. But the way it was written made it sound like something sinister. Like Marcus had a history of criminal behavior. Like everything he'd said about himself was a lie. The comments section was already filling up. I knew something was off about this guy. Once a criminal, always a criminal. Victoria Langford got played. Marcus's hands were shaking as he dialed Victoria's number. "I saw it," she said before he could speak. "Don't panic. They dug up my sealed juvenile record. That's illegal." "I know. And I know exactly who's responsible. Harmon. It has his fingerprints all over it, figuratively speaking. Victoria, this is going to make me look... It's going to make you look human. That's all. Everyone has a past. The question is what you do with your present. But the media... Let me handle the media. You focus on your work. How am I supposed to focus when people are calling me a criminal? The same way you focused when they were calling you a predator, by proving them wrong." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'm tired of proving myself. I know, but you're not alone this time. Remember that." She hung up. Marcus sat in silence, staring at his phone. Richard Harmon was coming for him. He'd known it was only a matter of time, but he hadn't expected it to hurt this much. That evening, Marcus came home to find Sophie sitting on the couch with tears streaming down her face. "Baby, what's wrong?" "Daddy, kids at school said bad things about you again." Marcus felt his heart crack. "What did they say?" "They said you stole stuff. They said you went to jail. They said you're a liar." He knelt down in front of her and took her hands. "Sophie, look at me." She looked. "When I was 16 years old, just a little bit older than you, my mama got very sick. We didn't have money for medicine, so I made a bad choice. I took some cough syrup from a store without paying for it. You stole. Yes, I stole. And I got caught. And I had to face the consequences." Sophie's lip trembled. "Are you a bad person?" "I did a bad thing. That doesn't make me a bad person. Good people sometimes make bad choices, especially when they're scared or desperate. What matters is what you learn from those choices." "What did you learn?" "I learned that there are better ways to solve problems, that stealing hurts people even if you don't mean it to. And I learned that the only way to move forward is to be honest about your past." Sophie wiped her eyes. "So you're not a liar." "I've never lied to you, baby, not once. And I never will." She threw her arms around his neck and held on tight. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything in the world." Delia appeared in the doorway, her face hard with anger. "I saw the news," she said. "That Harmon man is behind this, isn't he?" "Almost certainly." "Can't someone stop him?" "Victoria's working on it." "Well, she better work faster. Because if he comes near this child again with his lies and his garbage, I swear to God I'll—" "Delia." "I mean it, Marcus. There are lines you don't cross. Children are one of them." Marcus stood up, keeping Sophie close. "I know. And I'm going to make sure he pays for this. All of it." "How?" "By doing exactly what I've been doing. By building something he can't tear down. By being better than he is." Delia shook her head. "Sometimes being better isn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And sometimes," Marcus said quietly, "the best revenge is success." The next morning, Victoria called an emergency press conference. Marcus watched from his office as she stepped up to the podium, cameras flashing microphones thrust toward her face. "I'm going to keep this brief," she said. Recent reports have surfaced about Marcus Webb's juvenile record. I want to address them directly." The room went silent. When Marcus was 16 years old, he shoplifted cough medicine for his sick mother. He was arrested. He faced the consequences. And he spent the next 18 years building a life of integrity and service. She paused, letting the words sink in. That sealed juvenile record was obtained illegally and leaked to the press as part of a deliberate smear campaign orchestrated by former CFO Richard Harmon. We have evidence of this, and we are pursuing legal action. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But I want to say something else. Something more important. Victoria looked directly into the cameras. We live in a society that loves to judge people by their worst moments. We dig up their pasts and use it to define their futures. We pretend that anyone who's ever made a mistake is unworthy of redemption. Her voice hardened. That stops here. Marcus Webb made a mistake when he was 16. He was trying to help his mother. Since then, he's been a devoted father, a hard worker, and the only person brave enough to save my life when everyone else stood frozen. I don't care about his juvenile record. I care about who he is today. And today, he is exactly the person this company needs. She stepped back from the podium. Questions. A reporter shouted, "Miss Langford, do you think this attack will affect Mr. Webb's credibility?" "Not if people have any sense." "Are you concerned about more revelations coming out?" "I'm concerned about a former executive using illegal means to harass and intimidate a good man. That's what people should be focused on." "What legal action are you planning against Mr. Harmon?" "Our attorneys are preparing a civil suit for defamation and invasion of privacy. We're also working with law enforcement regarding the illegal acquisition of sealed records." Another reporter pushed forward. "Miss Langford, some people are saying you've become too personally invested in Mr. Webb, that your judgment might be compromised." Victoria smiled coldly. "I'm personally invested in every employee of this company. That's called leadership. Any other questions?" Silence. "Good. This press conference is over." She walked off the podium, and Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "That's how we fight back." Marcus typed his reply. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Get back to work." He smiled and put down the phone. The weeks that followed were a war of attrition. Every few days a new attack would surface. Anonymous tips to reporters, whisper campaigns among executives, attempts to discredit witnesses who had come forward with complaints. Richard Harmon was fighting dirty, using every connection he had to undermine Marcus's work. But Marcus didn't stop. He kept listening, kept documenting, kept building his case. And then, 6 weeks after he'd taken the job, he called Victoria into his office. "I'm ready," he said. "Ready for what?" Marcus slid a thick folder across the desk. 47 documented cases of workplace abuse. 12 supervisors and 3 managers implicated. Sexual harassment, wage theft, safety violations, retaliation against whistleblowers. Victoria opened the folder and started reading. Her face went pale. It's worse than I thought. Much worse. Marcus, some of these people have been with the company for decades." "I know. If we act on this, it's going to cause chaos. If we don't act on it, we're complicit." Victoria looked up at him. "You're sure about this?" "Absolutely sure. Every case is documented. Every witness is credible. I've verified everything personally." She closed the folder and sat back in her chair. "This is going to be ugly." "Yes. We'll lose some good people who'll be caught in the crossfire. Better than protecting bad people who don't deserve to be here." Victoria studied him for a long moment. "You've changed." "How so?" "When I first met you in that hospital room, you were broken, defeated. Now look at you." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not different. I'm just finally in a position to do something about what I've always believed." "And what's that?" "That everybody deserves to be treated with dignity. That the people at the bottom aren't less human than the people at the top. That doing the right thing shouldn't cost you everything. Victoria smiled. Lisa would be proud of you. Marcus felt his throat tighten. You know about Lisa. Fiona told me. Your wife. How she died. How you raised Sophie alone. I don't talk about her much. Why not? Because it hurts. Victoria nodded slowly. I understand that. My father died when I was 12. Heart attack. I was in the room when it happened. Marcus looked at her differently now, seeing something he hadn't seen before. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, but I never forgot that feeling of helplessness, watching someone you love die and not being able to do anything about it. Is that why you reacted so strongly when you found out what happened to me? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending that money and power make me better than everyone else. She stood up and picked up the folder. I'll call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. We'll present this evidence and start the terminations immediately. There will be pushback. Let there be. I didn't build this company to be a sanctuary for predators. She headed for the door, then stopped. Marcus, yes. Whatever happens next, whatever Richard throws at us, I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've built here. In 6 weeks, you've done more to change this company's culture than I managed in 30 years. I had help. You had vision. That's different. She left, and Marcus sat alone in his office looking out at the city. Tomorrow was going to be war. But for the first time, he felt ready for it. The board meeting lasted 4 hours. Marcus presented his findings, case by case, name by name, evidence by evidence. The board members sat in stunned silence as the scope of the problem became clear. When he finished, Victoria stood up. The terminations begin immediately. All 12 supervisors and 3 managers named in this report are to be escorted from the building by end of business today. Legal will handle severance and any potential lawsuits. One board member raised his hand. Victoria, this is going to cause significant disruption. Perhaps we should take a more gradual approach. A gradual approach to sexual harassment, to wage theft, to workers being injured because we ignored safety regulations. Victoria's voice was ice. No, we move now. The media. The media will report that Langford Industries took decisive action against wrongdoing. That's exactly the message I want to send. Another board member spoke up. What about Harmon? He's still out there and he's clearly not done attacking us. Richard Harmon is a separate issue. Our legal team is pursuing action against him, and I have evidence that he orchestrated the leak of Mr. Webb's juvenile record. He'll be dealt with. Evidence? Victoria nodded to Fiona, who distributed a second folder to each board member. The IP address of the device used to contact the reporter traces back to a laptop registered to Richard Harmon. We also have financial records showing payments to a private investigator who specializes in obtaining sealed records. The room went quiet. Richard's career is over, Victoria continued. He just doesn't know it yet. The vote was unanimous. All 15 terminations were approved. By 5:00 p.m., the executives and managers named in Marcus's report were being escorted out of the building. Their access cards deactivated, their computers seized for investigation. Marcus watched from his office window as one by one they walked to their cars, some angry, some stunned, some already on their phones with lawyers. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. This is just the beginning. Marcus stared at the message. Richard Harmon. He typed back, bring it. That night, Marcus had dinner with Sophie and Delia in their new apartment. Daddy, you look tired, Sophie said. Big day at work, baby. Did you help people? I tried to. Miss Victoria says you're a hero. Marcus smiled. When did you talk to Miss Victoria? She came to my school today. She talked to my teacher. She said I should be proud of you. Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. Did she... Uh-huh. She said you're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. She said that's what real heroes do. Delia reached over and squeezed his hand. She's right, you know. I don't feel like a hero. Heroes never do. That's what makes them heroes. After dinner, Marcus tucked Sophie into bed and sat with her until she fell asleep. He watched her breathing in and out, peaceful and content. 3 months ago, she'd been crying herself to sleep because kids at school were calling her daddy a monster. Now she was proud of him again. That was worth everything. The call came at 2:00 a.m. Marcus grabbed his phone, heart pounding. Hello? Mr. Webb, this is Chicago Fire Department. There's been an incident at your office building. Marcus sat up, fully awake. What kind of incident? A fire, sir. The 42nd floor. Your department. Marcus's blood went cold. How bad? The fire is contained, but there's significant damage. We're going to need you to come down and answer some questions. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and stared at the phone. His office. His files. All the documentation he'd gathered. All the evidence. Gone. He knew with absolute certainty who was responsible. Richard Harmon had just declared war. The 42nd floor was a disaster zone. Marcus stood in the hallway watching firefighters roll up hoses and investigators photograph the damage. The smell of smoke was overwhelming, thick and acrid, coating the back of his throat. Victoria arrived 10 minutes later, still in her pajamas under a hastily thrown-on coat. How bad? My office is destroyed. All the files. Everything. Digital backups. I kept copies on a secure server. Fiona has access. Victoria let out a breath. Thank God. This was arson. You know that, right? I know. Harmon. Almost certainly. A fire investigator approached them. Miss Langford, Mr. Webb, we found evidence of an accelerant. This was definitely intentional. Do you have any leads? Security cameras on the floor were disabled about an hour before the fire started. We're pulling footage from the lobby and surrounding areas. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He's escalating. Yes, he is. Victoria turned to face him. Marcus, I want you to take your daughter and go somewhere safe. I'll provide security. No. This isn't a request. I don't care. I'm not running. He tried to burn down your office. Next time it might be your apartment. Your daughter could be... I said no. Marcus's voice was hard. If I run, he wins. If I hide, he wins. The only way to beat someone like Richard Harmon is to stand your ground and make him face the consequences of his actions. And if he hurts Sophie, he won't get the chance. I'll hire security. I'll take precautions. But I'm not leaving. Victoria studied him. You've really changed. I've just stopped being afraid. She nodded slowly. All right, we do this your way. But the second there's any threat to your daughter, I'm pulling you both out. Understood? Understood. They stood together in the smoke-filled hallway, watching the investigators work. He's getting desperate, Victoria said quietly. Desperate men make mistakes. Then we wait for him to make one. And if he doesn't, Marcus looked at her, his eyes hard with determination. Then we make him. The mistake came 3 days later. Richard Harmon, in his arrogance, had hired a man named Jimmy DeLuca to set the fire. DeLuca was a professional, or at least he thought he was. He'd disabled the security cameras. He'd used an accelerant that was supposed to be untraceable. He'd worn gloves and a mask and done everything by the book. But he'd forgotten about the ATM camera across the street. The footage showed him entering the building at 1:47 a.m. wearing a maintenance uniform. It showed him exiting at 2:23 a.m., just minutes before the fire alarms went off. And it showed him getting into a car registered to a shell company that, after 3 hours of forensic accounting, traced back to Richard Harmon. The police arrested DeLuca on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, he was talking. Marcus got the call from Victoria while he was eating lunch with Sophie at a diner near their apartment. They got him. Harmon, the arsonist. He's cooperating with police. Full confession. Named Richard as the one who hired him. Marcus set down his fork. When are they arresting Richard? As we speak. I just got off the phone with the detective. They're picking him up at his penthouse. Sophie looked up from her grilled cheese. Daddy, what's wrong? Nothing, baby. Something good just happened. What? Marcus smiled a real smile, the kind that came from somewhere deep. The bad guy got caught. Richard Harmon's arrest made national news. The footage played on every channel, Richard being led out of his building in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage, shouting at reporters that he'd been framed, that this was all a conspiracy, that Victoria Langford and Marcus Webb had destroyed his life. Nobody believed him. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing payments to DeLuca. Phone records showing calls between them in the days leading up to the fire. Text messages where Richard explicitly instructed DeLuca to make sure nothing survives. The charges were severe arson, destruction of property, conspiracy, harassment, illegal acquisition of sealed records, and attempted intimidation of a witness. Marcus watched the coverage from his temporary office, a conference room on the 38th floor, while his department was being rebuilt. Fiona knocked on the door. How are you feeling? I don't know. Relieved, I guess. But also empty. Yeah, something like that. She sat across from him. It's normal. You've been fighting for so long. When the fight ends, there's always a moment where you don't know what to do with yourself. Is the fight over? Richard is facing 20 years minimum. His assets are frozen. His reputation is destroyed. He's done. But the work isn't done. Fiona smiled. No, the work is never done. That's why we need people like you. Marcus turned back to the window. You know what the worst part is? What? I almost feel sorry for him. Sorry for Richard Harmon. He had everything. Money, power, respect. And he threw it all away because he couldn't stand being beaten by a janitor. That's not why he did it. Then why? Because men like Richard Harmon don't know how to lose. They've spent their whole lives winning, stepping on people, manipulating situations, taking whatever they want. When someone finally stands up to them, they can't handle it. They'd rather burn everything down than admit defeat. Marcus nodded slowly. I've known men like that my whole life. So have I. That's why we have to keep fighting them. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Marcus testified on the second day. He told the jury everything: the CPR in the boardroom, the termination, the smear campaign, the leaked juvenile record, the fire. He spoke clearly and calmly, without anger, without bitterness. Just the truth. When the defense attorney tried to discredit him, Marcus didn't flinch. Mr. Webb, you have a criminal record, don't you? I have a sealed juvenile record from when I was 16. I shoplifted cough medicine for my sick mother. So you're a thief. I was a scared kid trying to help someone I loved. I made a mistake. I paid for it. I moved on. And now you expect this jury to believe that you're some kind of hero. Marcus looked at the attorney, then at the jury, then at Richard Harmon sitting at the defense table with hatred burning in his eyes. I don't expect anyone to believe anything. I'm just telling the truth. What people do with it is up to them. The defense attorney had no follow-up questions. Victoria testified on the third day. She described waking up in the hospital and learning that the man who saved her life had been destroyed by her own company. She described watching the unedited footage and realizing what Richard had done. She described firing him and watching him escalate from harassment to arson. Miss Langford, the prosecutor asked, why did you fight so hard for Mr. Webb? He was just an employee. Victoria's answer silenced the courtroom. Because he's not just an employee, he's a human being. And in a moment, when everyone else calculated risks and worried about optics, he dropped to his knees and fought for my life. That kind of courage deserves to be protected, not punished. Even at the cost of your company's reputation. Reputation is worthless if it's built on lies. Marcus Webb showed me what integrity actually looks like. The least I can do is return the favor." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Richard Harmon was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. When the verdict was read, Marcus didn't celebrate. He just sat in the gallery watching Richard being led away in handcuffs, and felt something heavy lift from his chest. It was over. Finally, mercifully, it was over. 6 months later, Marcus stood at a podium in front of 300 people. The National Conference on Worker Rights had invited him to deliver the keynote address. Him, a former janitor with a GED and a sealed juvenile record. The audience was filled with labor advocates, union leaders, corporate executives, journalists, and activists. All of them watching. All of them waiting to hear what he had to say. Sophie sat in the front row, her hair braided with ribbons, her eyes shining with pride. Beside her sat Delia, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. And next to Delia sat Victoria Langford, dressed simply without the usual armor of power suits and jewelry. Marcus gripped the podium and began. "My name is Marcus Webb. 6 months ago, I was a janitor. A year ago, I was dying on my kitchen floor because the world had decided I was worthless." He paused. "I'm not here to tell you a success story. I'm here to tell you a survival story. Because that's what most workers are doing, surviving. Getting through one day, 1 week, 1 paycheck at a time. Hoping that tomorrow will be better. Praying that the system won't crush them completely." He looked out at the audience. "I saved a woman's life. I dropped to my knees in a boardroom full of executives, and I performed CPR while they stood there frozen. And you know what happened next? They fired me. They called me a predator. They leaked a sealed juvenile record to make me look like a criminal. They tried to erase me. And they almost succeeded." He took a breath. "I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who did what any decent human being would do in that situation, but in a world where decency is punished and cruelty is rewarded, that made me dangerous. Dangerous to the people who profit from keeping workers silent. Dangerous to the executives who build their careers on the backs of invisible people. Dangerous to a system that treats human beings like disposable parts." His voice grew stronger. "The employee welfare initiative that I built at Langford Industries isn't about charity. It's about justice. It's about creating systems that protect people instead of exploiting them. It's about making sure that when someone does the right thing, they don't lose everything. In the past 6 months, we've processed over 200 complaints. We've terminated 15 managers and executives for misconduct. We've recovered back wages for workers who were being cheated. We've implemented safety protocols that have already prevented 3 serious injuries. And we've created a culture where people can speak up without fear of retaliation. That's not because I'm special. It's because someone finally gave people like me a seat at the table." He looked at Victoria. "I didn't get here alone. I got here because a woman had the courage to admit she was wrong and the integrity to make it right. I got here because my daughter believed in me, even when the whole world said I was a monster. I got here because an elderly neighbor named Delia told me to keep fighting when I wanted to give up." He turned back to the audience. "We all got here because of someone. A parent who worked double shifts. A teacher who believed in us. A stranger who showed kindness when we needed it most. That's what this is about. Not heroes and villains. Just people helping people. Just the basic human decency that should be the foundation of every workplace, every community, every society." He gripped the podium harder. "I know some of you are skeptical. You've seen programs like this come and go. You've watched companies make promises and break them. You've learned not to trust the people in power. I understand that. I felt that way my whole life. But here's what I've learned. Change doesn't come from the top. It never has. It comes from the people at the bottom who refuse to stay silent. It comes from workers who document abuse even when they're scared. It comes from witnesses who speak up even when it costs them. It comes from ordinary people who decide that enough is enough. I'm not asking you to trust corporations. I'm asking you to trust each other, to organize, to document, to support each other, to build networks of solidarity that can't be broken by any executive or any system. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. They need us more than we need them. Without workers, there are no products, there are no services, there are no profits. We are the foundation of everything they build. And when the foundation decides to stand up, the whole structure shakes. Marcus stepped back from the podium. I'm not going to tell you that everything is fixed. It's not. There are still companies that exploit their workers, still executives who abuse their power, still systems designed to keep people invisible. But there are also people fighting back. Every day, in every industry, in every city, people who refuse to accept that this is the way things have to be. I'm one of those people now, and I'm asking you to join me. Not because it's easy. It's not. Not because it's safe. It's not. But because it's right. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters. He looked at Sophie one more time. My daughter asked me once if I was a hero. I told her no. I told her I was just a man who tried to do the right thing. She said that's what heroes are. Maybe she's right. The applause started slowly, then built into a wave that crashed over the entire auditorium. People rose to their feet. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Marcus stood at the podium, tears streaming down his face, and let himself feel it. Not pride. Not triumph. Just gratitude. For Sophie. For Delia. For Victoria. For everyone who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. For the chance to matter. After the speech, the reception hall was crowded with people wanting to shake Marcus's hand. Labor leaders, corporate executives, journalists, activists. All of them pressing forward, offering business cards, asking questions, proposing partnerships. Marcus handled it as best he could, but his eyes kept drifting to the corner of the room where Sophie was sitting with Delia eating cookies and laughing about something. Victoria appeared beside him. You did well up there. I was terrified. You didn't show it. Years of practice. When you're invisible, you learn to hide everything. Victoria nodded slowly. Can we talk somewhere quiet? They slipped out onto a balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. The sun was setting, painting the buildings in shades of gold and orange. I have something for you, Victoria said. She handed him an envelope. Marcus opened it. Inside was a check for an amount that made his eyes widen. What is this? A bonus. For everything you've accomplished in the past 6 months. Victoria, this is too much. It's not enough. Not nearly enough. But it's a start. Marcus stared at the check. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll keep building. Say you'll help me turn this company into something worth being proud of. Is that what you want? It's what I need. Victoria turned to face him. Marcus, I've spent 30 years building an empire. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But until you walked into that boardroom, I never understood what any of it was for. What do you mean? I mean I was empty. Successful, powerful, respected, and completely empty. I had everything except the one thing that actually matters. Which is purpose. Real purpose. Not just making money or beating competitors, actually making a difference in people's lives. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You're giving me too much credit. All I did was CPR. You did more than CPR. You reminded me that there are people in this world who act without calculating the cost. Who do the right thing simply because it's right. Who see someone dying and don't stop to think about liability or optics or consequences. Anyone would have... Stop saying that, Victoria's voice was sharp. Anyone would not have done what you did. I was in a room full of highly educated, highly successful people, and not one of them moved. You did. That's not nothing. That's everything. Marcus looked out at the city. Sometimes I still don't believe any of this is real. A year ago I was mopping floors and wondering how I was going to pay rent. Now I'm giving speeches at national conferences and getting checks with more zeros than I can count. Does it feel strange? It feels terrifying. Like at any moment someone's going to realize they made a mistake and take it all away. That's not going to happen. How do you know? Because I won't let it, and because you've earned every bit of this, Marcus, every single bit. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Anything. That night in the boardroom, when you collapsed, do you remember anything? Victoria was quiet for a long time. I remember darkness, complete, total darkness, and then a voice, pulling me back, telling me to breathe, to come back. That was me. I know. I figured that out later. She turned to look at him. But in that moment, I didn't know who you were. You were just a voice in the darkness, a hand reaching out to pull me back from the edge. I was scared, Marcus admitted. More scared than I've ever been in my life. I kept thinking, what if I'm not doing it right? What if she dies anyway? What if I fail? But you didn't stop. I couldn't. Stopping wasn't an option. Victoria smiled. That's why you're special, Marcus. Not because you succeeded. Because you didn't stop. Sophie ran up to them as they came back inside. Daddy, Miss Victoria. They have cake. Marcus laughed and scooped her up. Cake, huh? What kind? Chocolate with sprinkles. Well, we can't miss that. He carried her toward the dessert table, Victoria walking beside them. Delia intercepted them halfway. That speech you gave, she said, her eyes wet. Lisa would have been so proud. You think so? I know so. That woman loved you more than anything in this world, and she always knew that you were meant for something bigger than cleaning floors. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I miss her. Of course you do, baby. You always will. But missing someone doesn't mean you stop living. It means you carry them with you while you do. Sophie tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, who's Lisa? Marcus knelt down so he was at eye level with her. Lisa was your mama sweetheart. She's the angel in your drawings. The one watching over us from the sky. The one with the pretty wings. That's right. Do you think she saw your speech? Marcus looked up at the ceiling, then back at his daughter. Yeah, baby, I think she did. Sophie smiled. Good, because it was a really good speech. 1 year later. Marcus stood at the window of his office, his real office rebuilt after the fire, bigger and better than before. The Employee Welfare Initiative had grown beyond anything he'd imagined. 300 employees now, branches in 12 cities, partnerships with labor unions, advocacy groups, and government agencies. The model he'd built at Langford Industries was being replicated across the country. Companies that had once ignored their workers were now implementing programs based on his blueprint. Workers who had once been invisible were finally being seen. And Marcus Webb, the janitor who'd saved a billionaire's life and lost everything because of it, was at the center of it all. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Board meeting in 10. Big announcement. Marcus smiled and headed for the elevator. The boardroom was full when he arrived. Victoria sat at the head of the table, surrounded by executives and board members. She gestured for him to sit beside her. Now that everyone's here, she said, I have an announcement to make. The room went quiet. As you know, I've been thinking about the future of this company for some time. About what comes next. About who should lead us into the next chapter. She paused. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO of Langford Industries. Gasps rippled through the room. My successor will be someone who embodies everything this company should stand for. Someone who has shown more courage, integrity, and leadership in the past year than most people show in a lifetime. She turned to Marcus. Marcus Webb will be the new CEO of Langford Industries. The room exploded. Marcus sat frozen, unable to process what he'd just heard. Victoria, what? You heard me. I can't. I'm not qualified. I don't have the experience. You have something better than experience. You have vision, you have integrity, and you have the trust of every worker in this company. But, Marcus. Victoria took his hand. A year ago you saved my life. Then you saved this company. Now I'm asking you to lead it. I don't know if I can. I do. I've never been more sure of anything. Marcus looked around the room, at the executives who had once looked down on him, at the board members who had questioned Victoria's judgment in hiring a janitor, at the faces that had once seen him as invisible. Now they were looking at him with something else. Respect. Okay, he said quietly. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Victoria smiled and stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the new CEO of Langford Industries, Marcus Webb. The applause was thunderous. Marcus rose slowly, his legs unsteady, his heart pounding. He looked out at the room at the people who would now answer to him, the company that would now be his responsibility, the future that was suddenly wide open. And he thought about Lisa, about Sophie, about Delia, about all the nights he'd spent wondering if he would ever matter. He thought about the boardroom floor where he'd knelt over Victoria's body, counting compressions, fighting for a stranger's life, while the world beat him down. He thought about the moment he'd decided not to stop. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for believing in me. I promise you, I promise all of you that I will spend every day trying to be worthy of this trust. He took a breath. I didn't grow up wanting to be a CEO. I grew up wanting to survive, to keep my daughter fed, to make it through one more day. But somewhere along the way, I learned something important, that survival isn't enough, that we're all connected, the people at the top and the people at the bottom, that when we lift each other up, we all rise. That's what this company is going to be about from now on. Not just profits, not just growth, but people. Real people with real lives who deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I know some of you are skeptical. A janitor as CEO. It sounds like a fairy tale, but fairy tales are just stories about ordinary people who refuse to give up. I'm an ordinary person. I've always been an ordinary person, but I've learned that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they're given a chance. You've given me that chance. Now let's go change the world. The room rose to its feet, and Marcus Webb, the janitor who'd saved a life, lost everything, and built it all back again, finally allowed himself to believe that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. That night, Marcus sat on the balcony of his apartment watching the city lights flicker below. Sophie was asleep. Delia was watching her favorite show in the living room. Everything was quiet and peaceful. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. How does it feel? Marcus typed back. Terrifying. Overwhelming. Impossible. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. I don't know if I can do this. You can. You've already proven that. What if I fail? Then you get back up. That's what you do. That's who you are. Marcus set down the phone and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, Lisa was watching. He was sure of it. I made it, he whispered. I finally made it. The wind carried his words away into the night, and Marcus Webb, CEO of Langford Industries, former janitor, widower, single father survivor, closed his eyes and smiled. Because he knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't the end of his story. It was just the beginning. But the beginning was enough. The beginning was everything. He had walked into a boardroom as an invisible man and walked out as something else entirely. Not a hero, not a legend, just a person who refused to stop fighting. And in the end, that was all anyone could ever be. A year ago, Marcus Webb had saved a stranger's life with nothing but his hands and his courage. Now he was going to save thousands more. Not because he was special, because he finally understood that everyone is special. Everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves to be seen. The city hummed below him alive with a million stories, a million struggles, a million invisible people waiting for someone to notice them. Marcus had been one of them once. Now he was their voice, and he would never ever stop fighting. Not for recognition, not for power, not for himself, but for every person who had ever been told they didn't matter. For every worker who had ever been stepped on. For every dreamer who had ever been told to stay in their place. For Sophie, for Lisa, for everyone who had ever needed someone to believe in them. Marcus Webb stood up, looked out at the city one last time, and made a promise. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, and he was ready.